It's tea time, positive tea time, and we are spilling all of it right here in this space created by two crazy, fun-loving besties. It's a no-judgment zone for sharing stories of hope, faith, love, growth, and most of all, grace and gratitude. So join us as we get ready to share some positivity and get a fresh perspective on life.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Spilling Positivity. As usual, Maria and I are very happy today because we have a special guest with a special story. Before we introduce her, I'm going to tell you that we want to thank our sponsors, and that's Tetley. Tetley is the sponsor of this episode, and they have some fantastic teas. We have Earl Grey, we have peppermint, we have the Boost with the berries, we have Support, and we also have Immunity. So Tetley, thank you for being the sponsor. We're very excited that you're on board. Maria, can you tell us about our guest today?
So our very special guest today is someone extremely special and truly amazing, Mrs. Ann Maxwell. She is a wife, she is a mother, she is a daughter, she is a sister, and she is just truly, as I said, amazing. So, Anne, welcome to Spillin Positiva.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I am so happy to be here.
We are happy to have you here.
Thank you. As Maria said, I'm a wife, a mother, and all of those things. I'm also a grandmother.
Yes.
I have three wonderful grandchildren, 3 boys, 2 of which are a twin. Mm-hmm. And, I didn't know where this twin thing came from. And so to have found out what I have found out, which I'm going to share with you.
Yes.
I was actually adopted when I was 17 days old and brought from Trinidad. So my mother always told me that I was adopted from the time I could understand.
Wow.
I was adopted by a lady in her 30s, a single mother who gave me a wonderful, wonderful life. But there was always something missing,
Was it missing? Could you feel it intuitively? What did it present itself as?
I would say so because, as I said, I had a wonderful life. My mother was, fantastic. I lacked for nothing. Had a really good childhood, but there was just this something. I didn't know who my grandparents were.
Right.
I didn't know my family history.
Right.
I was born in Trinidad, so I knew nothing about Trinidad and where I came from.
So you were adopted in Trinidad?
In Trinidad.
And then your mother came here?
Yeah, she actually was friendly with someone in the the welfare department or what would be the child care board now. Mm-hmm. And so they made that connection to a child in Trinidad, a baby in Trinidad, who at that point in time, she understood needed a home. Mm. So she went down to Trinidad, she brought me back here, and then, as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah.
Wow.
So she raised me by herself until I was about 10. Always a very precocious, always a very strong-headed individual. So at around 10, some friends of hers said that they thought that I needed some controlling. And so she met a gentleman who was 16 years her senior. They got married. And, it was a little rocky because at 10, having been with my adopted mother, my mother, as I know her to be, for all those years, and then bringing this strange person, he came from another country as well. So it was very traumatic. So my years 13, 10, 11, 12, 13, teenage years were a little rocky. So I had a very interesting time during those times. I did a lot of stuff. And thankfully, when I was about, I had given my life to the Lord. I'll have to preface it by saying that I'm a child of God. And I'd given my life to the Lord when I was about 7 at Billy Graham Crusade. But with those rocky years, I just, went my own way. And then in my early 20s, I came back to the Lord and I've been serving him, ever since. But there was always this missing thing. So in my 20s, I started to make some inquiries. I didn't want her to feel that I was ungrateful. So it was a little bit difficult at that time.
How did she take it when you started?
when I started to ask her, it's like she didn't really know that much.
Okay.
Right? Because in those days, there was no reason for you to have any information. There were no
Right.
records.
Really?
She just knew there was a child who needed a home. Some friend of hers told her about it. She went down to Trinidad and she picked me up and she brought me here.
Right.
Wow, that was very easy back then.
Yeah.
So I started to ask some questions and she wasn't sure. She thought that my father could have been like on the Marine base, could have been from the States. She wasn't sure. She said that when they went to carry my mother the documents to sign, they couldn't find her. But all of this was secondhand information that she got because she was just happy to have
the
this kid
baby,
and come back
yeah.
home, and she really wasn't checking for
Yeah.
none of that.
Yeah.
So there was very sketchy information, and I really could not find out anything. But in 1996, when I was 26 years old, I had a friend who worked at the Red House in Trinidad. And I asked him if he could check to see for a child born on my birthday, which is June the 5th in 1960. And he got this birth certificate for this child called Mary Sincere, S-T-C-Y-R,
Okay.
born to Carmen Sincere of Simeon Hill.
Really?
Wow.
And I said, well, Trinidad is a really big place. This may not necessarily be my birth certificate, but I held on to it.
Really?
I actually asked a friend who, in Trinidad as well, to look into the phone book. And she said, well, there weren't a whole lot of Sinceres, so she photocopied the phone book page, and I tried to call all of the Sinceres that I could find at the time. Do you know of a child that was put up for adoption? Do you know a Carmen Sincere? I didn't get anywhere with that. So, you know, after that, it was like, what do you do?
Yeah.
What do you do?
You keep
And
living.
You keep living. You go to the doctor and they ask you what's your family history. I don't know.
You don't know.
Are you predisposed to diabetes? Is there cancer in your family? I don't know. So as I got older, it was more important to me to find out, you know, my background. So I first started with 23andMe. 23andMe gives you a kind of a more of a biological, you know, what you're predisposed towards.
So what year did you start doing that kind of?
I started 23andMe last year, August.
Wow.
Wow.
Because obviously these things are overseas.
Yes.
We live in Barbados.
Yes.
How easy is that
Yeah.
Right.
to do? So I would, you know, I started to do my family history of my adoptive mother on something called Family Search, and I did all of that genealogy, and I traced them back to the 1700s because I had that information.
Right.
And then, so I built out a whole family tree of my adoptive family.
Yeah.
But my real family, you know, so that kind of increased in me the desire to know and to learn.
How did it impact on your children? As in, did it,
My children, I don't think it impacted on them at all, in that my mother was such a wonderful, wonderful woman, you know, their granny, and that's all.
Right.
That's
That's
all
all they
knew.
know.
That's all they knew. But I know they always knew of my desire, and so they would have supported me. But I had no name.
Right.
I had no name. All I know is I was adopted from Trinidad. No name. So where do you start?
But you also said earlier that not knowing there was something, how did that manifest for you? Do you think throughout your life, the not knowing, what did it make you feel like? What were some of the things that would, I don't know.
Well,
how would you act it out?
Yes.
the thing about it is when you have a family and you know your family history, you take it for granted.
Very true.
You take it for granted.
true.
Unless you don't have that history, you don't really know how you feel. But that's all I knew.
Right.
And so, but there was always a hole. There was always a longing.
Emotionally
Yeah.
speaking.
I always wanted to, and I think I wanted to meet my father more so than my mother, because I had that mother figure
Right.
in my life.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
But then in 19, I want to say, I can't say.
In the 90s.
In the 90s, sometime, or was it in the 2000s? No, it was probably in the 2000s. I think it was around 2006 now that I remember. We had a seminar at church, and it was about forgiveness. And I went to the seminar, and I wasn't aware that I was holding anybody, that I needed to forgive anybody.
Right.
But we went through the process. It was a day seminar. We went through the process, and it talked about forgiving. And I really searched myself, and I said, you know what? I feel that I am holding something. I don't know, like, why did my mother give me up?
Right.
Why? And I had that. I think that's how it manifested. I was not important enough for anybody to hold on to me.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly, now that you say so, that's exactly how it manifested, because I had a lot of failed relationships as well. So I got to the point where I said, yeah, why is it I'm so easy to give up?
Yeah.
And so, I had to do a lot of soul searching. I had to do a lot of talking to myself, understanding myself. And I believe a lot of the reason why I may have acted out in my teenage years was because of that. I didn't feel like, I had anybody to hold on to that.
You didn't know your roots.
I didn't know my roots. And so I went to the seminar, and as I said, I searched my heart. The Holy Spirit told me I need to forgive my mother and my father. And so I did that. I just laid it all down. You see, forgiveness is key.
Yeah.
It
Forgiveness
heals
is
you.
key
Yes,
to
it's for
everything.
you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I did that, and then time went on, as I said, and Ancestry and 23andMe and so on, they weren't really accessible. So last year, August, I went up, my daughter lives in Florida. So last year, August, I went up to Florida, and I said, you know what, I'm going to try this Ancestry thing. First of all, I did the 23andMe. So I got the kit, I did the spitting into the vial and sent it off, and got back the report. And there were some DNA matches, but nothing that I could identify really or act on.
Right.
So that was August. Then in October, a friend from my daughter's church was coming down to visit, because she's Barbadian. So I sent the kit to my daughter and asked her to give it to her friend to bring down. This is the Ancestry now.
Okay.
So she brought it down. I did the thing and, completed it before she was ready to go up. She took it up, and my daughter posted it off, and I was there waiting. So
How did you feel when you were waiting? Was it like
What
this?
was that like?
Well, 23andMe was a little disappointing.
Right.
So I wasn't sure, I really had no great expectations. After
Okay.
having looked and tried so many different things over the years, I didn't have really great expectations. I just said, well, let's see. And actually, I had never actually prayed about it either. I had never asked. I had never actually prayed about it. God knows the desires of our hearts. He knows that I want to find my family. But I actually intentionally prayed about it. So I said, Lord, let me find my family before. And I'm getting older. I don't know. Is it even likely that my mother and father are alive?
Right.
It's now or never.
Yeah.
And so I did it. It came back really quickly, maybe in about 3 weeks. And I got this one DNA match on I think I knew it was on my father's side. I believe I knew it was on my father's side. But anyway, I knew it was on my father's side because the individual was white.
Right.
And I know that my mother was not white, like my
Okay.
biological mother. So I reached out to my niece. It turned out to be my niece. I reached out to her and no response. So I was a little disappointed.
So this is the
again.
name that would have come up on the. Okay.
Hannah Wattam. So it came up. You get like first cousin, second cousin, third cousin, but it's not necessarily a cousin. It could also be a niece. So in that spectrum, it could be a niece, it could be a half sister, it could be whatever.
Okay.
So I reached out to her. As I said, nothing. And then one morning in church, 2nd of December, I was in church. I see this response come. Hi, I'm Hannah. I'd like to connect with you. And I'm saying, well, this is beyond anything that I could ever imagine, because she actually wants to connect.
Right.
Because they would tell you when you reach out. Actually, there's a group called Search Squad. These are like professional genealogy people who will help you to find your family. And they tell you don't reach out because people tend not to want to connect.
Okay.
But I threw all of that out the window. I reached out to her because why? I have nothing to lose.
Exactly.
So I reached out to her, as I said, and then she responded. So I said, would you mind having a WhatsApp call? And she said, sure.
Ooh, some good tea was spilled today. Tune in next week for part 2.